The most common question I get in my law practice is, do I need a trust? Well, this question itself brings on a bunch of other questions, like who doesn't need a trust? What type of trust do I need? What types of trusts are there? Why would I need a trust? Why would I not need a trust? Well, you're in luck because today we're gonna do Trust 101. Everything there is to know about trusts, who it's for, who it's not for, what do they accomplish. So let's start with this. What is a trust? I like to explain a trust as an agreement between yourself and maybe your spouse that establishes exactly what it is that you want to happen when you either become incapacitated or you pass away. This can cover a whole wide variety of things such as avoiding taxes, protecting your loved ones, protecting your beneficiaries, making sure things go to the right people at the right time. So there's a bunch of things that a trust can do, but I want you to understand that it is the foundation of establishing your wishes after you pass away. The next question we get a lot of is, what different types of trusts are there? Typically, on a first conversation with a client, we're going to be talking about a revocable trust because this is the foundation of their plan. It's something that continues to be amendable and even revocable by the person who sets it up. There's no commitment, there's no feeling that you've given up a right, but it's that vehicle that allows us to avoid probate and to accomplish all those other things I was talking about. The other category of trust would be called an irrevocable trust. This is a category of trust that you set up, you give up control of the assets you put into that trust, and you commit to never changing that trust document. And there's certain very particular reasons you might do one of those type of trusts, like trying to avoid a claim from, Medicaid recovery or avoiding estate taxes. So a question that we get obviously is, who needs a trust and why? And I sort of have a little test I like to do, which is, tell me who you want your assets to go to when you pass away. Now, some people say, I want my assets to go to my children in equal parts when I pass away. If that's a hard stop, they might be able to accomplish that, depending on how many children they have, with some other means, some other type of estate plan other than a trust. However, most people say, I want my assets to go to my children when I pass away, but if they say but, I know there's something else coming that they want to achieve. And so an example of this might be, I want my assets to go to my children, but I want to make sure that if they got divorced, my son's divorcing spouse would not get anything. Or I want my assets to go to my children, but I wouldn't want them to get anything until they turn 25. Or I want them to go to my children, but I would never want them subjected to the claims of their creditors or even a lawsuit plaintiff. Okay, these are all reasons that we're going to start looking at a trust as a way to accomplish those goals. The next question that we get a lot of is, who doesn't need a trust? Well, this is sort of can be inferred from the last couple answers I gave, but an example of a will-based plan we did just last week was someone who had one child, owned a house, and had a few very straightforward bank accounts. Well, in that case, we could put the son's name as beneficiary on the bank accounts, and we could do a transfer on death deed on that piece of real estate. The transfer on death deed worked well in that case because there was only one beneficiary. It starts to work a lot less well as you add more beneficiaries to the mix. This individual also had a very modest estate and wasn't as concerned with those elements that we can add after the assets are actually transferred. And so that was a situation where that person maybe could say they didn't need a trust. The next question we get a lot of is, how much does it cost to set up a trust? Well, it's important to understand here that in a trust, the benefits are always going to outweigh the cost if we do it. So for example, if you have an estate that's subject to Minnesota estate taxes, a trust can actually help you avoid those Minnesota estate taxes to the clip of 14% in some cases of your assets that are subject to the tax. So to get down to brass tacks though, a trust is typically going to be between $3,000 and $4,000 with add-ons that can even make it more expensive than that. But again, a trust is never going to be worth less than you pay for it, and we wouldn't do a trust for you if that was the case. And so this begs the question, how much can you save by setting up a trust? Well, I mentioned one of the things. We can save you from paying estate taxes in certain circumstances. We can also obviously save your family from going through a probate process when we use a trust. Now, the AARP has said that someone should plan on spending between 5 and 7% of their estate value on just that probate process when you consider all of the different costs and expenses. So certainly it's very costly if you need a trust not to set up a trust. The next question here is, why would you need to get this done sooner rather than later? Well, there are certain types of trusts that actually require a certain period of time to pass before they become effective. This is especially critical when dealing with that Medicaid question going into a nursing home. Otherwise, it's just important to get this done while you still have capacity. And unfortunately, I've seen many situations where people lose capacity rather suddenly, or they lose capacity and leading up to that time, they were very stressed out and dealing with a bunch of other matters where they weren't able to get that estate plan done that they'd always been planning to do. And so always important to not put this off. It is a very easy thing to put off, but I'd encourage you to speak to an attorney that can help you get this done. The next question here is, why do you need to speak with a specialist in order to set up a trust? Certainly there's a lot of different ways to do trusts nowadays, and there's websites online, and people I've even seen download something from a library before, and I certainly would not want to recommend that to anybody that I care about. A trust is a very complex document. It's got to have the right pieces and parts in it to accomplish the various different goals and priorities that you might have. And it's also got to have language in there to address contingencies, in my opinion, that you may not even have contemplated, such as a child getting divorced, a child getting sued, a child developing a special need that we hadn't contemplated. All of these things we want to get into that trust document, and if you're trying to do this yourself, the chances are you're going to miss something that's going to cause a problem later. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you live in Minnesota and you want to know more about the very best way to protect your family and your assets with an estate plan, click the link below and watch our free video about how to protect yourself with a solid estate plan in Minnesota. Next, if you've decided that you want to set up a trust and you do live in Minnesota, then click the link below to our website to schedule a complimentary consultation with us.